I have just as much of a right to have a career as my husband does. And I think honestly, it's the reason why so many women drop out of the workforce. How are you is not a sufficient depression screening, okay? It still is very uncommon in the United States to have paid maternity leave. So today we are taking it back to the YouTube of 2016 and we're gonna do a working mom tag video. Do you guys remember tag videos? I feel like these were like super popular on Facebook too in like the 2009, 2010 era. So today I'm answering all of the questions about being a working mom. Just grab a drink and stick around and let's chat. Okay, so the first question is, what made you decide to work instead of staying at home with your kids? I feel like most of these questions, like dads never get these questions. Dads never get these questions, and in fact there isn't even a term called working dads. Like, it's kind of sexist, but whatever. I guess I really never thought or wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I went to nursing school after I graduated high school, and I actually experienced, as I was growing up, my parents got divorced when I was 8, my sister was 3, and my mom had always been a stay-at-home mom. She did have an associate's degree, but since my sister and I were born, she stopped working and she didn't have any work experience. And then when her and my dad got divorced, that was when our life kind of like spiraled down. And part of that was that I really watched her struggle to make ends meet, and even really just live above the poverty line was like a real struggle. And I know that, you know, back in those days, it was definitely more common for moms to stay at home with their kids, but that had like a huge impression on me as a kid. And so when I grew up, and even when I knew I was going to start my own family, I always knew that I wanted to be able to take care of myself and my kids financially if something like that or even something else were to happen to me. And also, I really love my job. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for I guess it's been 19 years now. 19 years ago, I was an LPN. I got my RN license 18 years ago. And it's always been something, like a part of my life that's very fulfilling to me. Obviously, being a mom is fulfilling as well. But I always felt like I've been the type of person who really needs something outside of motherhood to kind of drive and fuel me as well. Question number 2 is, how has your career evolved since becoming a mom? I would say that the first several years that my kids were born, so this would have been, I would say, like a good 5-year period during my career. I had babies, toddlers, little kids, you know, my kids are 3 years apart. And it was super rough for me. I would say around those times when I was having babies, taking maternity leave, even after you get done with maternity leave and you go back to work, it's a struggle to kind of be your normal productive self during the day and to be as prolific in your work as you would like to be, because you're up all night with a baby and then you're trying to go to work each day and function like a normal human, and it's just very difficult to do. So when I look back at my resume during that time, there's like a very large gap. I'm normally a type of person who I really like to take on extra projects, get extra work experience, volunteer for different things, you know, professional development opportunities. And that was just a time in my career where I really couldn't do that. And even when my kids were smaller, obviously, you know, they're getting sick, they're going to daycare, they're going to preschool, they're picking up germs from everyone. And so I do think that those years while your kids are little and you're still trying to balance a career are very challenging. Obviously, I'm married and I have a husband. I don't think that we necessarily shared as much of the load as we could have when the kids were younger. And so I was still, most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time was the primary one kind of staying home with them when they were sick and things like that. But I feel like once my kids started to get older, I was able to, you know, branch out and do more things in my career and just try different things, apply for different jobs. I would say the biggest way, I think, since my career has changed is that I started out as a nurse in direct patient care. And in fact, before I went to nursing school, I had worked in long-term care and in a skilled unit in a hospital for 4 years while I was going to nursing school. And so I did patient care for quite a while. And then once I graduated and I worked for several years as an acute care nurse on the inpatient floor, I started getting into more administrative positions. So obviously using my background and my knowledge as a nurse, but not necessarily doing direct patient care. And now I'm in a spot where I'm in a consulting position. And so I feel like as my kids have been able to be more independent and get older, that has really helped me be able to put more into my career and grow and get different positions that were able to not just like increase my salary, but obviously do just different things that were fulfilling to me as well, because I'm not the type of person who's probably gonna have the same job for like a 30 or 35 year career. I like to do different things. I like to try different things. By no means do I like hop from job to job. Anytime I have a new job, I at least give it 5 years. I would say 4 to 5 years, really. I'm gonna do something. I'm not the type of person that I wanna get a job and then go somewhere else a year later. But I do think that it's always good to try different things and stretch yourself, because even though it's scary, you never know what's really going to work for you in your career. Okay, so we need to talk about something that has been a game changer for me lately, which is filling those nutritional gaps while I'm on semaglutide, because some days I can barely eat like 1,300 or 1,400 calories, and I know that at times my nutrition is suffering. That is where Grunes come in. So thank you to Grunes for sponsoring today's video. These cute little packages are not your typical multivitamin or greens powder. It is all that and more, but it's packed into 8 fun gummies that taste like fruit snacks that you can take every day. And I actually look forward to eating these. First of all, the packaging is adorable. They've actually recently just changed their packaging. So if you've seen them on social media before, it's the same company with the same little cute bears, but I honestly like the new packaging better. So I'm happy that they went with that. But their formula has not changed a bit. Same great taste, same incredible nutrients. So let me tell you why these are so special. Each daily serving has over 20 vitamins and minerals, plus 60 plus whole food ingredients. That's some serious nutrition power. They are all vegan, gluten-free, and nut-free. And they also have just 3 grams of added sugar, or you can opt for the sugar-free version like I have. Another big draw of Grunes is how bioavailable the gummies are. So unlike pills or powders, your body actually absorbs what you're taking in. No more expensive vitamins just leaving your body unused, if you know what I'm talking about. So whether it's a better energy or immunity support, or if you're just really bad at taking regular vitamins, which I am, Grunes makes it easy to stay on track, even like I said, with the challenges that I have had with taking semaglutide. And I know from posting my what I eat in a day videos that a lot of you guys are on these medications as well. So these really have been a game changer for me. Like I said, I take 1 package every morning, super easy. And I also love that they come in these little packs, because while I'm traveling, I can take them with me. I just throw however many I need into my bag and boom, I'm good to go. And let's be honest, they taste like fruit snacks, not health food. So it's a win-win. They seriously do. It is like fruit snacks. Order them. I'm telling you, they do. So if you're ready to simplify your nutrition and make it actually enjoyable, Grunes has an offer for my viewers. Right now, you can get up to 45% off. So I'll have a link in my description below. Just head down there, click on that, try Grunes. I promise you, you will love them. You're gonna know that you're eating like a delicious little fruit snack like bear, but it's actually good for you. And trust me, your body will thank you. Did you face any challenges returning to work after maternity leave? How did you overcome them? Yeah, those were like the roughest years of my life, I would say. My daughter Kira was born, she was only born about 2 weeks early, but she had meconium aspiration. And so I just thought I was going to the hospital to have a healthy baby and take her home 2 days later. And as it turned out, she ended up in the ICU for almost 3 weeks after she was born. And unfortunately, I only had 6 weeks of maternity leave, because at that time, and it still is very uncommon in the United States to have paid maternity leave. And so even though I was, quote, allowed under FMLA to take, I think it's up to 14 weeks of leave after you have a baby, we didn't have that much money saved up. I mean, Adam and I were not that far into our careers. We had recently gotten married, we bought a house, and so we weren't super financially secure. We were definitely not secure enough for me to be taking off, you know, 10 or 12 weeks of work at that time. And so I ended up going back to work just 3 weeks after Kira came home from the NICU. So she was 6 weeks old. It was awful. I also had very profound postpartum depression, and I even had moments of postpartum psychosis that went undiagnosed for, I would say, like 3 months after I went back to work. And so it was just an awful time for me. I have a lot of compassion for women who are coming back to work after maternity leave, especially when their babies are so young. It was probably one of the hardest times, if not the hardest time in my life. Thankfully, we had family around to help us. So, you know, my mom watched Kira a lot when she was little. We also had in-home daycare. Adam's parents live close by too. And so we did have family help. I will say that I was definitely not great. And Adam and I have talked about this since, as like, I was definitely the primary caregiver when my kids were babies and toddlers and things like that. And I probably should have, you know, involved him more in like the taking care of the children, especially like, since we're both gonna get up and go to work in the morning, like we need to alternate nights or something so that at least one of us is getting a good night's sleep every other night, because it is just so difficult to function at work and be like a productive member of society if you're getting woken up every 90 minutes to feed a baby during the night. Now, when Connor was born, we had saved up money and I was able to take 10 weeks off of work. And even though that's still a short amount of time, that was way better. I did not experience postpartum depression after he was born, although I was under the care of a psychiatrist at that time and I had already been on antidepressants, and so they were monitoring me very closely. It was a much better experience. He also did not end up in the NICU, so that was great also. And we were just able to take him home. And of course, Kira was a toddler at that time, so I was able to be home with her for 10 weeks. And that was honestly a great experience. I still think that going back to work when your baby is 10 weeks old is very difficult. I just think that it's a shame especially in America, that we don't have, you know, guaranteed family leave for parents, because it makes it very, very challenging. And I think honestly, it's the reason why so many women drop out of the workforce when their kids are small, is because it is so hard, it's almost impossible to do. I always felt very strongly about keeping my career because of a lot of the reasons I outlined earlier. So obviously with family support and with my husband's support, you know, we were able to do that, but it was difficult. The fourth question is, how do you deal with feelings of guilt as a working mom? I don't really feel guilty. I don't think moms should feel guilty regardless of what choice they make. If they want to stay home and take care of their kids, if they want to go to work, I don't think any of us should feel guilty, because dads are not given that same pressure, right? Like, no one asks a dad when they're out somewhere working, like, oh, who's taking care of your baby? like I've been asked that since I travel for work. It's like, oh, who's taking care of your kids? Their dad. You know, so I don't really subscribe to that. I think that my kids, it's important for my kids to see that I have a career that I love and enjoy, and that I'm able to obviously contribute financially to our family. So that's something that's really important for me, for them to see growing up. I try to, as much as I can, take off work and do things with them when they have events. So I've always taken off when I'm able to. When my kids were in grade school and they'd have Halloween parties and Valentine's Day parties and Christmas parties and stuff like that, if I'm home, I always take part of the day off and go into school with them, do the parties, go on the field trips, you know, all of that fun stuff. And then of course, you know, I also have a job where I don't have to work the weekends anymore, and so I'm still present, you know, being at their games on the weekends and their practices during the week and things like that. So there's really nothing, in my opinion, to feel guilty about. Question 5, have you ever considered switching to part-time work or being a stay-at-home mom? Why or why not? I've never considered doing part-time work, really. There was a time when I was really struggling with depression after I went back to work after Kira was born, that Adam and I were talking about me quitting work and staying home. And I think part of that was just because I was in a bad place mental health wise, and I didn't really know what was going on or how to deal with it. I think it's really interesting for me to kind of look back at that time in my life, and it's like, obviously I'm a nurse. I have taken care of many depressed patients. I have done screenings to figure out if my patients are depressed or not, and yet I still wasn't able to realize that myself, like I was profoundly depressed. And so that's always something interesting to me, is like when you can have all the knowledge in the world, but when something happens to you or your child, it's a little touch and go at times. But I did consider it for a while, and I think financially we definitely could have made it work, but I never wanted to give, like when I dug deep down in myself, I never wanted to give that part of myself up. And so I just always continued to like soldier on. And I can say now that in looking back in hindsight, I'm very glad that I persevered in my career and that I was able to keep working, and that I don't have that gap on my resume or lack of experience or anything like that. Okay, the next question is, did you experience any postpartum challenges and how did you address them? I did talk about that at length already. But like I said, I think it was about 3 months after I went back to work after Kira was born that I just knew that something was not right. And I think it's interesting because by that point in time, I had already gone back to my 6-week appointment, obviously with my OBGYN, and I don't remember being screened for depression at all. I'm hoping that that has changed at some point in these 15 years. But you going to a doctor's appointment as a new mom and the, healthcare providers there asking, how are you? How are you is not a sufficient depression screening, okay? Like, now if they would have asked me, are you crying every day? Do you feel hopeless? Do you want to yourself? Things like that. Then it's like, I would have been like, yes, yes, yes. And then they would have been like, oh, you're depressed. So I felt like the lack of screening was really appalling, honestly, now that I look back at it. But yeah, I was able to see a psychiatrist, and I was able to start on antidepressants. And at that time too, I needed to take meds when I would sleep, as soon as Kira started sleeping through the night, because I would be so anxious and on edge that I wouldn't even be able to fall asleep at night, even if I wanted to, right? So that helped me a lot. I also have been in and out of, talk therapy over the years. After Connor was born, I did have an additional antidepressant added, and I've been on those same medications for 12 years now, and they've been working great. And I always say, we shouldn't have stigma about mental health diagnoses or mental health medication, because no one's gonna give you crap if you take meds for your blood pressure, right? And if your brain's not working right and you need to take a medicine to make your brain work right, then that is fine. And I say better living through pharmaceuticals. Okay, so the next question is, how does your family support your decision to work full time? I don't know. I feel like this has been an evolution also. And my husband and I have been married for 18 years. And I think in that time, we have gone through a lot of periods where one of us was doing more than the other person in some aspects of like sharing the load, as when it comes to like childcare and just taking care of a home and things like that. So I do feel like that's something that has really improved, in terms of what Adam does with the kids compared to when they were babies. And I don't know, you guys can let me know if that has happened with you also. I just feel like when kids are young, it's so easy for the mother to become like the default parent, and then you just don't end up asking for help because you think it's easier if you just do it, and then kind of this resentment builds up. And so obviously there's things like that in any relationship that you have to work through, and Adam and I have talked about that like at length. And I always joke with him that because I took care of the kids when they were babies and toddlers, now he gets to do it when I go out of town for work. So it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of not. But yeah, I mean, I just think that I have just as much of a right to have a career as my husband does. I don't think that any one is more important than the other. Obviously, there are a lot of financial decisions to make. Like if one of us were to quit our job, we would have to evaluate like, okay, what makes more financial sense? But Adam is very involved with the kids. In fact, he's the one that typically keeps the calendar around their after school activities. We have a shared calendar that we keep in terms of like where the kids need to go for practice or games or extracurricular activities or things like that. And honestly, even when I'm home, he's probably the one that's running them to their practices anyway, because it's after work and I'm cooking dinner, which is totally fine. If he wanted to stay home and cook dinner, he could. I'd go run the kids wherever, but it's just kind of what works for us. I would rather cook dinner. He would rather shuttle the kids places. And he's always been very supportive of my career. Even now, you know, the job that I have now is very different than the one that I had previously. So about 4 years ago, I actually left the hospital that I had worked at for a very long time and took a job as a consultant. And in this job, I am able to travel all over to different hospitals and clinics really throughout the country. It's always a surprise kind of where I'm gonna get sent next. And we do different things like training, facilitation, a lot of focus groups, and we work on implementation of new tools. And it's a really fun, rewarding job. I love that I still get to go out kind of into the field per se and work on, you know, work with nurses and doctors and whoever at different hospitals and clinics to improve patient care. It's just I'm not doing direct patient care anymore, and I get to work on a lot of really fun projects, and the work is very fulfilling to me. It's something that people have often asked me, especially after I was, you know, successful on YouTube, is like, oh, well, are you ever gonna quit your job and do YouTube full time? Absolutely not. First of all, I would never want to do that because I really value my job and I love what I do. And I also have a lot of fulfillment just in the security of having a job and a regular paycheck and health insurance and a 401k and all of those fun things that a career affords you, right? Whereas if I quit and we're just doing YouTube, you know, I'd be self-employed, and the pay is not always very stable, right, on social media. And so it has always been important for me to keep my job. And in fact, if you asked me to choose tomorrow, quit YouTube or quit your job, I would most definitely quit YouTube, although I don't want to, because I really enjoy it. I really enjoy connecting with people who love to cook. I enjoy connecting with other working moms. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start my channel in the first place, was to show that women can have fulfilling careers and have kids, right? Like, you can do all these things. You don't need to follow this narrative that you're gonna stay home and, you know, not work as soon as you have kids. And you can also have kids and have a career, and you can go back to school, or you can pursue different things professionally. In fact, I went back and got my master's degree when my kids were little also. And so you can do all these things. It's hard, but like, life is hard anyway, right? So like, choose your hard. Do things that are gonna make you more successful in the long run, and it all works out, and success builds it builds on itself, right? Each time you do something new, either personally or professionally. How do you involve your kids in understanding and appreciating your work? Well, first of all, I've tried to explain to my kids what I do before, and so they don't really have a good understanding of what I actually do at work on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I think they do on a surface level, but they know that my career is very fulfilling to me. They know that the work that both their dad and I do is important work. And so they've never really questioned that. I will say with Connor especially, he does not like it when I'm not home. So like, every time I have to leave and travel for work, he's like, why do you have to go? Can't you stay home? Can't you just tell him you're staying home this week? And I'm like, no, you know, I'm scheduled to go. I can't let my coworkers down. So I would say like, that's probably the hardest part for me, is the traveling. But again, you know, this is a job that I probably won't have forever either. I'll probably do something different at some point, who knows? Or maybe I will keep this job. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I think that, you know, with kids, it's important for their parents to be happy, right? They see that, and kids are going to complain about stuff Kids are gonna complain about stuff regardless, right? And in fact, I think I was more impacted by my mom not necessarily having a stable career throughout my childhood. I always wished that she would have been a little bit more independent in that way. And so I don't really worry too much about my kids. They know that, you know, the reason why they get to live in this house and have these things and can go to college and things like that is because of all the hard work that their dad and I do. So I think as they get older, you know, they put those things together. Okay, what role does your partner play in balancing household responsibilities? I would say that we, you know, after being married for 18 years, you kind of know the jobs that you want to do and like to do in the home. Like, for example, I like to cook. I would even say that I love cooking. Does it get a little exhausting to cook dinner every night after night for infinity? Yes, but I still enjoy it, and so it's something that I do. Adam would rather mow the lawn. In fact, he enjoys, like he tells me all the time, he's like, I love mowing the lawn. He has a riding lawnmower. We have an acre of grass. He mows it. He likes it. And so I think you just have to have open conversation about the workload. And figure out who likes to do what. And if there's something that neither of you want to do and you have the finances to do it, then you hire someone to do it. If you don't, then you can negotiate, right? Like trash, we alternate trash. Like one week Adam takes it out, usually I'm on travel, another week I'll take it out. Taking the kids places, like I said, we both do that, but I would say that he does it a lot more than I do. So I think that it's just obviously very important to have open communication. If something is not working for you, you need to be able to have the space in your relationship to say that, and your partner should respect that. So yeah, I mean, it's always an evolving conversation, but I feel good now about where we're at in terms of kind of dividing up the workload of kids in a home and all of that stuff. What advice would you give moms transitioning back to work after maternity leave? The first thing I would say is that you need to be very gentle with yourself, and you need to stop beating yourself up, because especially if you're a person that is used to going to work every day, you come in early, you stay late, you go above and beyond, you do all these different projects, that might not be you after you come back from maternity leave, and that's okay. Like, you can still rebound to that employee that you once were, but hopefully you have supervisors and leadership that are supportive of that. You know, I talked earlier about how that time in my life when I had babies and little kids was very difficult for me in my career. Obviously, I was still able to go to work, do my job responsibilities. I just wasn't able to kind of go above and beyond like I was used to. And that's something that I had to be okay with. And I also knew that it wasn't going to be like that forever, because I knew I wasn't gonna have more than two children, absolutely not. And so now, you know, after my kids got older, and especially I think the game changes so much when they don't need daycare anymore, because that is always such a struggle. Like if your daycare closes, or let's say you do in-home daycare and, you know, they call off for the day, that is always such a struggle. I just remember when my kids were little, and once they're old enough to stay home by themselves, it gets so much easier. So if you have little kids and you're having a hard time, just wait, because I promise it's not going to be like this forever, okay? Okay, and then the last question is, what piece of advice have you what's the best, if I could read, can I read? Apparently not. What's the best piece of advice you've received about being a working mom? Okay, I don't know if this is necessarily advice that I received from any one person, or whether it's just based on kind of like observations and conversations that I've had, but you can't always prioritize your work over your family, okay? Now, if it's a situation where you're gonna get fired if you don't do something, that's different. But if you're sitting here feeling guilty about taking 4 hours of vacation because you wanna go to your kid's Halloween party at school, you need to clear your calendar and go to your kid's Halloween party at school. Because I often tell people this, and in fact, I was just mentoring someone at work a few months ago, and I said, you know, I feel like a lot of times we have more loyalty to our place of employment, obviously, than our place of employment has to us. I mean, obviously that's a symbiotic relationship, but at the end of the day, if I walk outside and get hit by a bus, yeah, my coworkers are gonna be sad. Yeah, they're gonna send an email out about me saying that I passed away. Yeah, they're gonna all pool their money and send flowers to my husband. But at the end of all that, they're gonna turn around and post my position and they're gonna fill my spot with somebody else, right? So just talking practically about it, there are times when you need to prioritize your family over work, and that's okay, because those are the things that your kids are going to remember. And I've always been very conscious of that, right? Because I can still remember my Halloween parties, my Valentine's parties, my Christmas parties in grade school, right? And so I've made it really a point to get to that kind of stuff, to go on the field trips, to always be there, you know, cheering in the stands when my kids have a game. And so that's what I would say, is that it's good to have loyalty towards your employer. But if they don't advocate for family and work-life balance, which my employer does, and I feel very grateful for that, then it might be time to look for a different job somewhere that's gonna actually offer that work-life balance, right? So thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any other questions that I didn't answer in this video, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll answer down there. And don't forget to head down to the description box below and check out that link for up to 45% off of Groons. Thank you so much for joining me on another day of Vlogmas, and I will see you guys later. Bye.